What if there was a way in therapy for you to go far beyond just understanding your childhood wounding, your patterns, or maybe learning some communication skills? What if your therapist actually had the ability to help you understand the blueprint of your unique soul and the why to your journey in this incarnation? Hi, I'm Amy Rose White. I'm an integrative psychotherapist making mental health videos for spiritual people. And I'm here to talk about why I'm an astrologer and a psychotherapist. And although I think I'm a lifelong learner, really in both departments, but especially astrology, as I'm still in a 3-year certification program and have been seriously studying it for 5, and it's been part of my years for over 25, I have found astrology to just absolutely go hand in hand with my practice as a psychotherapist, especially from a psychospiritual orientation. And I'm here to talk about why. And even if you have a wonderful therapist that you love, this is no shade towards them. And I'm not saying every therapist needs to be an astrologer, but I do want you to understand how the lens of both really can marry each other so beautifully, especially in my perspective, using modern archetypal psychology, which is the ancient practice of Hellenistic traditional astrology, which is my preferred approach. If you're interested in depth psychology, if you believe there's a soul, if there's a part of you that knows there must be some greater reason why you're here, if there's an impulse that you have to understand why the crazy synchronicities of life line up the way they seem to line up, and how things kind of tend to fit together, and why sometimes just meeting someone you feel like you've known them forever. Or maybe there's a pattern that no matter how much therapy you do, how many books you read, you keep enacting it, you keep butting up against it. I know for me, there's one of those in my life that astrology has helped me much better understand and even begin to see the timeline of perhaps karma that is related to those patterns that I'm actually in a completion phase of right now. And I can absolutely tell you, although I won't go into detail today, I can see how I'm unwinding and showing up differently, and my life experiences are reflecting that over this particular 30-year cycle that is mapped out very clearly in my natal chart. And I'll talk more about today what I'm even referencing and why as we go along. So the birth chart, based on the apparent time it takes, the 12 months for the sun to circle the earth, although we know that it's the inverse is true, but from our heliocentric place on earth, we see the sun as creating the seasons via those 12 months it takes to go around and the 12 lunar cycles during the year. The ancients took that numerical rough value of 12, it's not perfect, to divide the sky into 12 pie slices that coincide with areas of life. Now, there's a very deep, rich tradition which explains exactly why in more detail than I'm going to go on here, and you can check out Nightlight Astrology to see my teacher, Adam Ellenboss, who I've been studying with for several years, to learn more about the ancient roots. And I highly recommend his programs if you're interested, even just for personal and spiritual growth. So there's not a lot more than I will say other than that. But when we have those 12 pie slices delineated in the natal chart, and I'll give an example here of what a natal chart looks like, a therapist can actually help you see where your purpose, as often illumined by the sun, where your deeper areas of needing to be nurtured, the emotional world, the body, the life, the environment of where your soul is sort of experiencing its purpose as designated by the moon, your rising sign, how the way that people perceive you and sort of the calling card that you are wearing in this lifetime, how those primary luminaries and points in the chart, as well as several other major planets and points, express themselves by virtue of the sign they're in, the house they're in, and the dignity or the aspects that they make to each other. And those are more advanced topics. I'll go into it another time. But basically, you can see if the way you're going to feel safe in the world is already compromised as it's relating to other planets in the birth chart. You can see whether your life purpose is going to be enacted in a part of the chart that might have a lot of challenges or a lot of supportive blessings. And you can generally see the times where those challenges versus blessings have shown up. So from that perspective, as a therapist, it's extremely helpful to encourage people to identify that there is a reflection in the skies with the patterns in their life. That doesn't mean they're necessarily doing anything wrong, even if they are struggling with something, because there's a higher and a lower octave to all the expressions of all the planets in all of the signs. So when people identify simply as a sun sign, they say, oh, I'm a Virgo, I was born in September. That's really just a tiny part of the picture. It's not looking at some of the other really important aspects of the chart that define the character and the relationships that we have to all the other elements of ourselves and the psyche. So from a psychotherapeutic lens, the birth chart actually helps me look deeply into someone's psyche. And, as an intuitive psychotherapist, it helps me bridge what I sense or know, see in my mind or feel with what is outlined by the stars' relationships to one another and planets. From that place, people can really be validated in the whys. And I think, meaning, why am I like this? Why does this keep happening? And although that's not a super useful question, a better question is, what's the message? And we can ask that question and get a lot of answers in the natal chart. It's a really normal question to ask, and it's one that I have had for myself. So, for example, if you have some planets that are by aspect really challenged by other planets in the 7th house of relationships, you can understand why certain things might happen the way they are. You can tend to see an abusive childhood or a controlling parent in the chart. You can tend to see if a person has a lot more unconscious material by virtue of how many 12th house placements they have and what the dignity of those planets are. Now, it's not a one-for-one correlation, and you're not going to get a lot of information just by looking at any chart, in my opinion. It's all contextual. So when people give you background data, then you can find how it makes sense in the chart, and you can also see remediation in the chart. So for example, if you have a lot of planets that are what my teacher called dinged up in difficult positions or placement in the chart, the antidote is often found on the other axis of the chart. So those 12 pie slices all are in relationship to one another. One is opposing another. And we can use all of that information to help give people a sense of the strengths that they can develop, the skills that they can explore, and the vulnerabilities to be mindful of. Finally, the reason why it is so important, in my opinion, to embed astrology with psychotherapy is that the whole point of using astrology really as a divinatory tool, much like the tarot, which is how my teacher Adam speaks of it. And I think that makes a lot of sense because it is a little bit science in terms of using math and astronomy, and it's a whole lot of art, and it's definitely intuition and up for interpretation depending on the reader and the given moment in time that the questions are being asked. But the point from the ancient perspective of using astrology is to understand the one and the many, the sun, that omnipresent light, and the ever-changing energies and positions of the moon. And that liberation of the soul from the illusion of the material that is sort of the many of the moon, the challenges, the fortune, the changeability that we experience as represented by the moon in the lunar cycle and the moon in the natal chart, is juxtaposed from the ancient lens with the eternal essence. And you can call that self-energy and parts work of the sun, of the soul, the ever-changing, non-dual nature of reality. And the goal is that we then are less identified with this temporary ego and the material world. And we can understand our patterns from the place of our soul's journey showing up in these different ways in how the planets are relating to each other in our birth chart, but with less attachment to the desired outcome. Because in astrology, the goal is awakening. The goal is greater consciousness. The goal is spiritual liberation from that illusion, Maya. And understanding how we can increase our consciousness through this beautiful tool by understanding that we're just a speck on a speck And for me, that is it's humbling. It helps put things in perspective, and it frees people from really feeling like their character is the only thing that is somehow to blame for the patterns that unfold in their lives, because it is far, far more complex than that from a cosmic evolutionary soul journey perspective that really all types of astrology provide for us. I hope this is useful to you. Tell me if you've ever seen an astrologer or a therapist or seen someone that puts them together. Has it been useful for you when you have had any of those kinds of information merged? And please share this with someone who would be interested in the topic. I look forward to making more astrology videos in the future. And until next time, may you be at peace, may you be happy, may you be healthy, and may you be safe. Bye for now.